For the last 7 months, the government has been hands-off in the rail dispute. Now, though, it's changed direction and is centre stage in negotiations.
Train operating companies have got permission from me to make a new offer to rail unions. That's what they're going to be doing. That's what I was asked to do. That's my role in the process. But it's important now that we give some space for the employers, so that's the train operating companies and Network Rail, to continue having discussions with the RMT to try and reach a conclusion.
Welcome.
This new offer, a stark contrast from the position taken by his predecessor at the start of the dispute.
It is for the employers to negotiate pay deals. I don't have the power, I literally don't have the power to do that.
But empty stations and frustrated commuters seems to have led to a change in tactics. Talks on the new deal reconvene next week, according to the government, although the RMT says it's yet to receive anything in writing. So will there be a new offer for health workers too? Nurses at 55 NHS trusts in England go on strike on Wednesday and Thursday. Today they threaten to escalate action next month if progress isn't made on pay and working conditions. And comments made by the Prime Minister earlier this week have angered ambulance staff, due to walk out again on the 23rd of January.
What's terrifying is that right now, people not knowing whether when they call 999, they will get the treatment that they need.
Now, the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, has told the GMB union the voluntary arrangements put in place during strikes are not enough to ensure patient safety.
I think our members feel betrayed by it, frankly. Our members felt that they stepped up. They were commended by ambulance trusts about the way they'd engaged over the dispute. They ultimately took a decision to stand up for their service, for their pay. And unfortunately, they feel that they've been let down by the government on this, and that the government has singled them out to play politics.
Where does that leave the prospect of a resolution then?
Well, it certainly doesn't help it.
The Labour leader has called on the government to do the grown-up thing and negotiate a settlement with health staff. And he's launched his own vision to secure the future of the NHS. Sir Keir Starmer has prescribed a series of reforms, including allowing patients to bypass GPs and self-refer to specialists, making GPs NHS employees rather than self-employed, doubling the number of graduating doctors and district nurses, and providing more training places for nurses and midwives.
I'm a passionate defender of the NHS, but in order to preserve the NHS going forward, it has to change. And what we've seen is the worst NHS crisis under this government, and every year it just gets worse. I think that if we reform the NHS, we can give it, make it fit for the 21st century and have it absolutely focused on patients.
But the current focus is on staff and how to end an increasingly bitter dispute. Nurses went on strike for the first time ever last month. That novelty has well and truly worn off now, with plans for more than 200,000 to walk out next month.
Well, joining me now from North London is Helga Pyle, the Deputy Head of Health for the Unison Union. Thank you very much for coming on the programme, Helga Pyle. If the nurses do double the numbers of those on strike in February, what impact do you think that will have on patients?
Well, this is a really pivotal week in the NHS pay dispute in England, because last Monday we had some chink of light, some change of tone, and this week Unison has followed up on that and written to the Health Secretary asking him to take forward one of the things that were discussed in that meeting, which was about getting some urgent conversations with the Treasury about the benefits of investing in NHS pay. So there's a week ahead now where some urgent work can be done to put some concrete proposals on the table that will allow strikes to be called off and intensive negotiations to take place.
So are you piling on the pressure precisely now because you think that the government is in an increasingly weak position?
What we want to see from the Prime Minister and the Chancellor is the same change of tone that we saw from the Health Secretary, which was to acknowledge that we need to put more money into NHS pay, do so urgently, boost the pay award for this pay year, and look to the longer term about how we rebuild the workforce that's currently struggling with 133,000 vacancies and the kinds of pressures that we've all seen unfold in front of our eyes. So ambulance workers were on strike last week, and we were talking to many of them about just what they were seeing, both in terms of their own shifts and spending so long having to queue outside hospitals, to what they saw when they got in.
But basically what you're saying, as far as I understand correctly, is that you've got Steve Barclay on side already, the health secretary, but now you need to persuade the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, and he's not able to do that himself.
What's needed is fresh investment, and that really does come back to the Treasury. And it's notable that the Chancellor, the current Chancellor in his previous role as Health Secretary, is no stranger to negotiating with unions on NHS pay. He negotiated with our General Secretary a resolution to the last time we had a dispute in England, which was 2015, and he also negotiated a 3-year deal that covered 2018 to 2021. So we hope that some of that experience of understanding how you can do a deal that delivers for NHS staff, that delivers for NHS employers, that ensures that we can recruit and retain staff, is the right thing to do, and is clearly what's necessary now.
So you're hoping that Jeremy Hunt will bring out his inner former health secretary. But what happens if he digs in? Does that make him the bad cop in this?
Well, I think what we heard there in your package is that this really is a moment of truth, because if there is no change of heart and no fresh money, those strike days will simply escalate. We have further groups of staff and further unions who are likely to start to see their members come out on strike. So, and what we do know as well is that the public are really behind the health workers. We saw that both on the picket lines last week, but also in the polls, and they want a resolution and they want the government to act.
Now, what about patients? Because Steve Barclay has said that, for instance, ambulance drivers did not meet the minimum service requirements that they had promised. Nurses might be in the same position. So what do you say to that charge?
Well, it's really disappointing to hear those kind of allegations. Steve Barclay and Grant Shapps are well aware that we negotiated very detailed emergency cover exemption agreements with ambulance trusts last week and in December. And those were negotiated with each trust in order to take account of the differences and particular structural issues that each trust has in terms of how they run their services. So they know that happened. And all this talk of minimum service levels is simply a smokescreen.
Okay, got to leave it there. Helga Pyle, thank you very much indeed.